Yeah, what's good, party people? The place to be. I go by the name of the BK Apologist, transmitting all the way live. New York is the city, Brooklyn is the borough. What's good? What's popping? And thinking of New York. Ooh, let me change that. Hold up. Okay, cool. What's going on, man? Hope everybody's chilling. What's up, party people? Hope you're all doing well. And speaking of New York City, please shoot out a prayer for my city. Sunday at 8 p.m., we will be going under lockdown, right? The whole city will be under lockdown because of the virus. All essential employees have been sent to work home. And the only things that will be open will be pharmacies and groceries. And believe it or not, also liquor stores. Because God forbid that we would have sober people at this time. You know what I mean? So what up, Lisa J? What's going on? You from Queens, right? Let me know if I got that right. You're Queens, right? We got CMB in the building. You know, come on, guys. Come in. Like, share, and subscribe. What's up, Mr. Perry? All right. Where you worked in Gowanus? I lived in Gowanus, bro. That's crazy. I grew up in Gowanus. That's crazy. That's what's up. But hey, Phil Fox, Fred Sanford in the building. Wow, Black Atheist is in the building. That's what's up. Okay. Rox B, you know what I mean? It's Lisa. Oh, Lisa. My bad. Historia in the building. No doubt. All right, guys. So what we're going to talk about today is what is the problem with the conscious community. So let me get my slides up, because you know me, I stay sourced up. Hey, is there application to be a mod on your channel? No, not at all. Hold up. Let me see if I know how to do this. Oh, okay, here we go. Bang. All right, you're in the building. All right, so, you know what I mean? So with that being said, we're going to get to it, guys. All right. The problem with the conscious community. What is the conscious community? Because before we can have any kind of discussion, right, we have to define terms. So what exactly is the conscious community? Well, we go to one of the vanguards of the conscious community, Saneter. Saneter has probably one of the largest platforms within the community. He's considered the OG of the movement, at least one of the OGs. And recently, he actually wanted to define what Black consciousness is. And in one of his videos, he says it's a global movement which aimed to restore Black consciousness and African consciousness, which had been suppressed by slavery, colonialism, and racism. All right, again, it's a global movement which aimed to restore Black consciousness and African consciousness, which has been suppressed by slavery, colonialism, and racism. And my good brother, Adam Coleman, wrote an article about the conscious community. So I'm going to quote my brother here. He says here, the conscious community is a rather nebulous entity. There are a few main belief systems that people who consider themselves to be conscious tend to subscribe to, but no formal creed or organization around which the conscious community revolves. These include the Hebrew Israelites, Moorish scientists, Egyptian Kemetic spiritualists, and practitioners of African mysticism. Loosely speaking, people who hold to these pro-Black religions and ideologies often associate themselves with the disjointed Afrocentric subculture referred to as consciousness community or consciousness movement. In this context, the term consciousness alludes to the process wherein a person of African descent awakens to their true African indigenous self. You know what I mean? So I think that's a really good summary of the conscious community. Now, because there's so many different types of ideology, we can't cover all of them within 30 minutes. So what I want to do is focus on pretty much the most popular ideology that you will find in this community. And that is, of course, ancient Egypt, which is better known in this community as Kemet, right? This is the ancient word for ancient Egypt. So now that we know what the conscious community is, and you know the focus of this discussion will be Kemet, now the question can be answered: what is the problem with the conscious community? The problem is worldview. Now, what exactly is a worldview? Well, I'm glad you asked. In the book of What's Your Worldview, or Interactive Approach to Life's Big Questions, James Anderson says, just as the world itself suggests, a worldview is an overall view of the world. It's not a physical view of the world, like the sight of planet Earth you might get from an orbiting space station. Rather, it's a philosophical view of the world, and not just of our planet, but of all of reality. A worldview is an all-encompassing perspective on everything that exists and matters to us. He goes on and says, your worldview represents your most fundamental beliefs and assumptions about the universe you inhabit. It reflects how you would answer all the big questions of human existence, the fundamental questions we ask about life, the universe, and everything. Worldviews play a central and defining role in our lives. They shape what we believe and what we're willing to believe, how we interpret our experiences. And Ronald H. Nash, in his book, Faith and Reason, he defines a worldview as a conceptual scheme by which we consciously or unconsciously place or fit everything we believe and by which we interpret and judge reality. Philosopher Michael D. Palmer explains some of the ways a worldview functions. Through our worldview, we determine priorities, explain our relationship to God and fellow human beings, assess the meaning of events, and justify actions. I'm trying to give you a really good, thorough definition of worldview. In the simplest terms, a worldview may be defined as how one sees life and the world at large. In this manner, it could be compared to a pair of sunglasses. This is from Norman L. Geisler and William D. Watkins, Worlds Apart, a handbook on worldviews. Really, really good resource to have. So a conceptual heart of a worldview is theology, metaphysics, epistemology, and axiology. So what we're going to do today is we're going to do a compare and contrast to the Kemetic worldview to the Christian worldview and see which is more sustainable, right? That's what we're going to do for the rest of this show here. So, of course, we got defined terms. Theology, from the Greek word theos, is most simply defined as the study of God. Every worldview has a theology. That is to say, it reflects some kind of perspective on God. Its view of God may be precise or it may be very vague. It may be explicit or implicit. It may be primarily negative in its perspective, focusing more on what God isn't than what God is. But every worldview has a take on God. This is also from James Anderson, What in the World is a Worldview, Part 4. All right. So in the complete God and Goddess of Ancient Egypt, this is what Richard H. Wilkinson says. He says, the origins of religion in ancient Egypt and of the gods themselves go back to dimly distant prehistoric times, which may lie forever beyond our grasp in terms of our full degree of understanding. Yet, although we have no contemporary records to explain the evidence of these earliest prehistoric periods, archaeology and even myths recorded in later times have afforded us significant clues relevant to the birth of Egypt's gods. Okay, keep that in mind. To the birth of Egypt's gods. The evidence reveals a culture whose deities come into being as inherent parts of the world in which we could live and die, and mythically were doomed to the same apocalyptic fate as the universe itself. Time for the gods, as for all other aspects of creation, would eventually run out. Right? So the gods were born in ancient Egypt. And this term is called a theogony. Right? This is from the Greek English lexicon, and it explains that a theogony is the genealogy or birth of the gods. So in ancient Kemet, there is a theogony. In the Heliopolitan creation myth, Atum was considered to be the first god, having created himself. Keep that in mind. Okay, having created himself, sitting on a mound, which they call the Ben, or identified with the mound itself. From the primordial waters, Nu, Early myths state that the Atum created the god Shu and the goddess Tefnut by spitting them out his mouth. Atum did so through masturbation, with the hand he used in this act representing the female principle inherent within him. So Atum, who's considered the first god, created himself. He's a self-created being, right, from the primordial waters. Okay, keep that in mind. Atum was a self-created deity, the first being to emerge from the darkness and endless watery abyss that existed before creation, which is kind of strange, right? How can something exist before creation if it's a creation? But anyway, a product of the energy and matter contained in this chaos. He created his children, the first deities, out of loneliness. He produced from his own sneeze, or in some accounts, semen, Shu, the god of air, and Tefnut, the goddess of moisture. The brother and sister, curious about the primordial waters that surrounded them, went to explore the waters and disappeared into the darkness. Unable to bear his loss, Atum sent a fiery messenger, the Eye of Ra, which is what you see right here, to find his children. The tears of joy he shed upon their return were the first human beings. All right, this is from Egyptian mythology, Guide to the Gods, Goddesses, and Traditions of Ancient Egypt, Oxford University Press. Okay, I know it's a lot of stuff here, but I really want to set a proper foundation for their theology, and in this case specifically, their theogony. All right. Oh, before I even do that, so as you see, we have contingent beings creating other contingent beings. Right? That's kind of interesting. You know, Atum self-created himself, which means there was already stuff there for him to be created, but yet he's the first god, but there's already stuff prior to the god. There was already material there prior to the god, but Atum created everything. You can see the contradiction there, right? He's a contingent being. And in fact, these guys die. Right? These are gods who are created from stuff and also are privy to death themselves. All right? This is very important for you to understand because this will affect how we view the other aspects of this worldview. Because we're going to be coming back to this. All right? So now, it's vastly different than what we see in Scripture. Genesis 1, right? Verse 1 and 2, we all know this. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. There is no theogony in the book of Genesis. God has always been. Right? It says, in the beginning, God created. He was here before the beginning. Before there was any material elements, there was God. Whereas in the pantheon of Kemet, they all came from material things, right? Let's continue. Hebrews 3 verse 4. Every house is built by someone, but the builder of all things is God. So before there was anything, there was God, unlike Atum. Romans 11:36. For from him and through him and to him are all things. To him be glory forever. Amen. Isaiah 40, verse 28. Have you not known? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He does not faint or grow weary. His understanding is unsearchable. He's not a contingent being. He's not made of stuff. How can he get tired? Right? Psalm 90, verse 2. Before the mountains were brought forth, and what the Egyptians would say, before Ben, right, the primordial mound, or ever you had formed the earth and the world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. So the point here, when we look at that theology, the gods of Kemet are contingent beings who were not always here. But the God of the Bible is not contingent and is eternal. All right, so that's the theology. We just compare and contrast their theology with the Christian theology. And it's going to come back to haunt them really soon. Now we're going to talk about metaphysics. All right, now what's metaphysics? According to the book Questions That Matter, an invitation to philosophy, metaphysics is concerned with the ultimate nature, structure, and characteristics of reality. How does a person see themselves in the grand scheme of things? What is considered real and true strongly influence the so-called practical areas of life and affects what one person believes to be good and valuable. Now, before I even go to this one, remember in the previous one when Artun was looking for his kids? And when he finally found his kids, he was so happy he cried. And that's how humans were born. Was he specifically trying to create human beings? Or was it just an incidental production? Nowhere in the text says that he wanted to make them. It just happened. So as a human reading that story, how would you like to know that you was just an accidental consequence of him crying over the children he really wanted? How would that make you feel? Because that would be part of your metaphysics, your reality, right? But let's continue. Shu and Tefnut mated and gave birth to Geb, the earth, and Nut, the sky. Geb and Nut, though brother and sister, fell deeply in love and were inseparable. Atum found their behavior unacceptable and pushed Nut away from Geb, high into the heavens. The two lovers were forever able to see each other, but were no longer able to touch. So again, he was created accidentally because he was crying for his kids. And then his kids got into a sensual affair, which he does not agree with, and he separates it. And by separating them, he creates earth and sky. So not only were you created incidentally, but the earth in which you reside in was a result of a punishment to his kids. All right, remember, we're framing the reality of the ancient Kemetic community. So you was a mistake, and you just got lucky that your main god had beef with his kids, and by punishing the kids, you now have this planet which you can walk on. It was never meant really for you. It's just a happy accident, right? Sounds like what some scientists might say today. But what does the Bible say about this, right? Psalm 8, verses 3 and 4. When I look at your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars, which you have set in place, what is man that you are mindful of him? And the Son of Man that you care for him? The writer of the Psalm understood that these things were created for him, for humankind, and how that concept humbled the writer. It's like, why did you even think of us so highly that you made this wondrous thing called Earth? It wasn't by accident. You did this on purpose for us. And he was humbled and awed of that. Psalm 115, verse 16. The heavens are the Lord's heavens, but the earth he has given to the children of man. This was something that he created and gave to humanity. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a punishment. It wasn't, oops, here's the earth. That's not what happened here. God specifically created the reality that we have for us, not by happenstance. Next is epistemology. Now, what exactly is that? That's a good $20 word. Again, going back to the book, Questions That Matter, the fundamental study of knowing is the investigation of the origin, nature, limits, and validity of knowledge. All right? So we're talking about how to know what you know. It's the science of knowing what you know. So let's look at what grounds the knowledge of ancient Kemet. And we're looking at E.A. Wallace Budge, The Legends of the Gods. It says, the book of knowing the evolutions of Ra and of overthrowing Apep are the words which the god Neter spake after he had come into being. I am he who came into being in the form of the god Khepera, and I am the creator of that which came into being. That is to say, I am the creator of everything which came into being, not the things which I created and which came forth out of my mouth. After that, I had come into being myself. Again, self-created. Like, how does that work? Were exceedingly many. The sky had not come into being. The earth did not exist, and the children of the earth and the creeping things had not been made at that time. I myself raised them up from out of new, from a state of helplessness and inertness. I found no place wherein I could stand. I worked a charm upon my own heart, oh well, and I laid the foundation by Ma'at, and I made everything which had form. but he himself was created, right? I was then one by myself. I had not emitted from myself the God Shu, and I had not spit out for myself the goddess Tefnut, and there existed no other God who can work with me, right? This is basically a summary of what we talked about before, right? 4 different creation mythologies evolved in ancient Egypt, but several common themes run through each of them. It was said that in the beginning, the only thing that existed was a primordial ocean called Nu. Out of these waters rose a hill in which a temple stood. In each version of the Egyptian cosmogony, the creator of the world sprang forth from this primeval living temple. Cosmogony begins with Atum's creating himself on the hill that rose on the waters, and he then brought into being all the various lesser gods of the atmosphere, earth, and sky through bodily emanations. And one of those guys is Thoth. Thoth is the Egyptian god of writing, magic, and wisdom, right? We're talking about epistemology, how you get to know something, right? Well, this is the god of their epistemology and the moon. He was one of the most important gods of ancient Egypt, ultimately said to be self-created or born of the seed of Horus from the forehead of Set. As the son of these 2 deities who represented order and chaos, respectively, he was also the god of equilibrium and balance. So the god of wisdom and knowledge is a contingent being who created himself, who came from somebody's forehead. Okay? Think about that. Sounds interesting. Now, the principle of divine demise applies to all Egyptian deities. They all died. They all died. Texts dating back to at least the New Kingdom inform us that the god Thoth, the guy we just saw, assigned fixed lifespans to both humans and gods, while spell 154 of the Book of the Dead unequivocally states that death, literally decay and disappearance, awaits every god and every goddess. So the god of knowledge dies. He comes from other things, and he's not going to be here forever. Now, how stable of an anchor is that when it comes to your knowledge? To say that you know something is based on what? Based on this flimsy idea of this deity who's not going to be around for too long. As opposed to what we see in the Bible. Let me get a quick drink here. Hold on. I know I'm running through this. I got mad slides, guys. I got mad slides. Romans 1, verse 21. For although they knew God, they neither glorified him as God nor gave thanks to him, but their thinking became futile and their foolish hearts were darkened. Although they claimed to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images that made to look like mortal human beings and birds and animals and reptiles. Gee, I wonder what they got that idea from. Humans that look like birds and reptiles. Wonder what that's about. All right. Hebrews 7. Starting in verse 1. This Melchizedek, the king of Salem and priest of God Most High, he met Abraham returning from the defeat of the kings and blessed him, and Abraham gave him a tenth of everything. First, the name Melchizedek means king of righteousness, then also king of Salem, which means king of peace. Without father or mother, without genealogy, without beginnings of days or end of life, resembling the Son of God, he remains a priest forever. Of course, the Hebrew writer is talking about Christ. No beginning, no end, no genealogy. He's not contingent. He's not made of anything. He was always here and will be forever. Colossians 1:17, he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. Colossians 2:3, in whom are hidden all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. Again, talking about Christ. Proverbs 1:7, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. Psalm 11:10, Psalm 111, verse 10, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. All these who practice it have God understanding, have good understanding. His praise endures forever. We have a grounding for knowledge because we get our knowledge from a God who has always been here. He is the source of knowledge. And as long as we are humble and fear him, we have a connection to knowledge. Anybody that knows anything is because there's a God who knows all things and holds all things together. In the Kemetic worldview, it can't be held together because you have a God who was born and is about to die. So your knowledge has no grounding. Your epistemology is not attainable. But for the Christian, knowledge is, because our knowledge is anchored in the everlasting God. Now we're going to go into axiology. Axiology, again, going back to questions that matter. Axiology doesn't have anything to do with axes or hatchets. Rather, it involves asking questions concerning the origin, nature, meaning, and criteria of values. From Philosophical Foundations for a Christian Worldview, J.P. Moreland and William Lane Craig, an amazingly deep read, talking about moral values, focus on identifying what is right. The determination involves the systematic study of appropriate human conduct. Probing questions include what is the ultimate good? Is morality relative or obsolete or absolute? Are ethics invented or discovered? How does one ground or justify one's ethics? What is God's or ultimate reality's relationship to moral principles? We're talking about what's right, right? When we're talking about axiology, we're talking about what's right, what is valued. Now, in Egypt, there's a term called Ishfet, was then to be the counterpart of the term Ma'at, meaning world order or harmony. According to ancient Egyptian beliefs, Ishfet and Ma'at build a complementary and also paradoxical dualism. One could not exist without its counterpart. This is from Mulana Karenga, Ma'at, the moral idea of ancient Egypt, a study in classical African ethics. And in the Ma'at, the moral idea of ancient Egypt, it says here that Ishfet and Ma'at balance each other. Ma'at was to overcome Ishfet, that which is difficult, evil, disharmonious, and troublesome. Ishfet was to be overcome by God and to replace this unity with disorder and order. So it's kind of like a Kemetic version of yin and yang, right? Ishfet would be for us, I guess, sin, and Ma'at would be righteousness and harmony. So they have an axiology. They actually have an axiology of, balance and unbalance. But that's kind of interesting, because now we go into what's called the Book of the Dead. This is a book that was written for those who wanted to make sure they had safe passage into paradise. And it says here, the Native Confession, also known as the Declaration of Innocence, is a list of 42 which the soul of the deceased can honestly say it has never committed when it stands in judgment in the afterlife. The most famous line comes from the Papyrus of Ani, a text of the Egyptian Book of the Dead prepared for the priest Ani of Thebes. But here's the thing, right? When you get to the final stage in this book, you are with Ma'at, the goddess of justice. She has scales. And you would have this scarab that you see here that will represent your heart. And then you would put it on this scale, and it has to balance with the feather of Ma'at. And if your heart's too heavy, meaning that you've been wicked, and it tips the scales against you, you will be eaten by this crocodile-type monster and be disintegrated. But look at the incantation that's written in the back of this scarab. It says, "Oh, my heart, my mother. Oh, my heart, my mother. My heart of my different ages. Do not stand as witness. Do not oppose me in the tribunal. Do not show your hostility against me before the keeper of the balance. For you are my Ka, which is in my body, the protector who causes my limbs to be healthy. Go forth for yourself to the good place to which we hasten. Do not cause our name to stink to the entourage who make men in heaps. What is good for us is good for the judge. May the heart stretch, be happy at the verdict. Do not speak lies in the presence of God. Behold, you are distinguished, existing as a justified one." Basically, you're telling your heart, those snitch were almost there. Why would you need a spell for your heart not to speak about what's true? Unless, of course, you lied during your declaration of innocence. So now you've actually put in a fudge factor in your own spell, because you didn't really practice Ma'at, did you? It was Ishfet you was doing. So now you put this spell to kind of cover your tracks. So you have values. Doesn't seem like you're too keen on keeping them, though. And you knew that in advance. That's why you made this spell. How are women valued? In the lost word of Genesis 1, in the Bible, the word helper is common enough as a description of someone who comes to the aid or provide a service for someone. It carries no implication regarding the relationship or relative status of the individual involved. In fact, the noun form of the word found in this verse as used elsewhere refers almost exclusively to God as the one who helps his people. If we expand our investigation to verbal forms, we find a continuing predominance of God as the subject. Though there are a handful of occurrences where people help people, in this latter category, we find people helping their neighbors or relatives, people helping in a political alliance or coalition, and military reinforcements. Nothing suggests a subservient status of the one helping. In fact, the opposite is more likely. Certainly, helper cannot be understood as the opposite complement of leader. We know that when God creates woman, it's because Adam needed a suitable helper. We see here that the word helper doesn't mean sidekick. The woman is not Robin to the man's Batman. She is being described as an imager of God in her own right. And that Adam needs someone to remind him of who he's supposed to be, which is also an imager of God. So she's not a lower tier individual. She is super important. She is a helper, right? But not helper as an assistant. She's not the maid, right? She is like God, you know, in her attributes. She is an imager of God, someone to be held in high esteem, just like Adam, right? This is what the Bible teaches us when it comes to women. In Ephesians 5:25, it says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. How should we treat women? Like the kingdom of God itself. This is what the Bible teaches. I think women are highly valued. Don't you think? If we are to be as Christ and to give our lives up for her as Christ does the church. 1 Timothy 5, starting verse 1. Do not rebuke an older man harshly, but exhort him as if he were your father. Treat younger men as brothers, older women as mothers, and younger women as sisters with absolute purity. We are to respect women. We are to value women because they are fellow images of God, so that they are not to be disrespected. They are to be treated as pure as sisters, right? And we don't have time. I have so many different things I can share about the status of women in the Greco-Roman world as opposed to the Christian one. We don't have time for that. Well, I wish it is. It says, Christendom dare not forget that it was primarily the female sex that for the greater part brought about its rapid growth. It was the evangelistic zeal of women in the early years of the church and later which won the weak and the mighty. This is from the Service of the Women in First Centuries of the Christian Church by Leopold Zarhanach. Women wouldn't be so keen to share their faith if they were getting a bum deal in the church. They got their freedom and value empowerment for being in the church of God. And because of that, they told everyone else about the joy that they've got in Christ because they were valued in the church. But what about in Egypt? How were Egyptian women valued? Well, according to Nawar Sadawi in a UNESCO paper entitled Prostitution in Egypt, it says prostitutes in ancient Egypt were respected and even considered sacred as the first institutions where prostitution flourished, were the temples of the gods. Right? Prostitution was considered part of the religion of ancient Kemet. Another quote from the same paper, the god Amun indulged in sexual activity with many women under religious guise. Families often gave their most beautiful daughters to the priests of his temple. As soon as they grew too old for the taste of the priests, they were allowed to leave. Many practiced prostitution until they were married. Again, this is part of their religious ideology, the way they treated women as sexual objects. Now, someone might say, but you know, there's a lot of Christian men and women that indulge in prostitution. True, but when they do that, they are straying from their religion. In ancient Kemet, when you dealt with prostitution, you were staying in your religion. Big difference, really big difference. This is from Karakuni, when women ruled the world. But as Hatshepsut would discover, success can be tricky. If performed traditionally as the gods would expect, good rule is abstract, something another leader could easily take credit for as his own. Indeed, Hatshepsut's own nephew and co-king would later erase her figures and texts and reassign credit to his father or grandfather for much of what he had done. But I thought we revered our women in ancient Kemet, right? The black woman is God. But then why would you erase the woman's exploits? Because when you do the knowledge, she was actually a really good pharaoh. She got busy. Why not commemorate and pay homage? No, they censored it. Why? Because they didn't value women in ancient Kemet. And according to ancient texts, literate and educated Egyptians believed that creation and regeneration specifically belonged to the male gender. Men were thought to be responsible for offspring from a sexual union, not women. Goddesses were believed to be protective vessels. Essentially, Egyptian women had to shift their gender and masculinize themselves to enter the fields of peace and other realms of the afterlife. These gender alterations, therefore, had to be included in an elite Egyptian woman's funerary equipment, particularly her coffin. So she had to become gender fluid if she wanted to go to heaven. Being a woman wasn't important, because if it was, a woman would be able to go to heaven. She had to become a man first. So how is women being valued in Egypt? Now we're going to go into how are humans valued. In Matthew 10:29, are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall into the ground outside your Father's care. And even the very hairs of your head are all numbered. So don't be afraid. You're worth more than many sparrows. Right? This is Christ talking about us and how valuable we are. In John 13, it says, a new command I give you, love one another as I have loved you. So you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. So not only does Christ consider us valuable, he's saying that we should consider each other valuable as well. And how much does God consider us valuable? Well, Romans 5, verse 8, but God demonstrates his own love for us in this: while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Right? So this is how valuable humans are to God. That he came down, was beaten, and was marred beyond human likeness for the very things he created. That's how much he loves us. But what about the kings in Egypt? The retainer sacrifice. I won't go into too much detail here, but in pre-dynastic times, when a king died, all the servants around him had to be killed with him so they can serve him in the afterlife. And it was known as the retainer sacrifice. Right? Not so much of a good pension plan if you work for the pharaoh, huh? What kind of value is that? You had to, if I die, you're all coming with me. All right? And Egypt also participated in a thing called othering. Othering is a set of dynamics, processes, and structures that engender marginally and persistent inequality across any of the full range of human differences based on group identities. We cut through this one. I want to share this. It says, the coward is he who is driven from his borders. Since the Nubian listens to rumors, to answer him is to make him retreat. Attack him, he will turn his back. Retreat, he will start attacking. They are not people one respects. They are wretches, craven-hearted. My majesty has seen it, and it's not an untruth. This is from King Sanwarset III, talking about Nubian people and how bad they are. Right? In the book entitled Wretched Cush, we see Egyptian ideological stereotypes presented Nubian ethnicity in negative terms. In this case, as cowards. In the celebratory monuments of the ancient Egyptian state, Nubia could not simply be referred to by its ancient name, Cush, but must always be Wretched Cush. The negative qualities of Nubian ethnicity help to define the positive qualities of Egyptianness. So in order for them to feel good, they had to put everybody down. And since the Nubians were their neighbors, this is the people they focus on. You're terrible, therefore I'm great. Sounds like a particular ideology that we see today, isn't it? Well, you know what? Let me do this. Okay, let me do this. The ideologues of the Egyptian state created similar oppositional ethnic categories for political ends. Thus, Cush, the ancient toponym of Upper Nubia, was transformed into Wretched Cush after the Egyptian New Kingdom conquest. Wretched connotes not only inferiority, but also a sense of foreordained failure in any rebellion against Egyptian authority. The mandatory linkage of Wretched and Cush also activated sympathetic magic against Nubians. So this racism, this prejudice, was part of their religion cachet. This is what they used, right? It was a part of their religion. To hate someone based because they did not look or were from the same country was part of their religious ideology. All right, let me just keep going here. Actually, you know what? No, I'm not gonna do that. Yes, look, this is how they treated other foreigners. Piles of phalluses of the enemy dead presented to the god Amun-Re by King Ramses III, represented in a relief from the first court of the mortuary temple of Ramesses III at Medinet Habu, Luxor, Egypt. So they would capture these people and sever their phalluses and then offer them to the god Amun-Re. This is how they valued human life. And then lastly, until the later part of this period, the non-royal deceased had limited access to an afterlife beyond the tomb. The ideological chasm between the king and the subjects was emphatically obvious. Only the king crossed the great divide and ascended to heaven. While kings enjoyed a smorgasbord of stellar, solar, and Osirian expectations in the royal netherworld, the elite were restricted to an earthbound eternity. Direct contact with the gods was the prerogative of the monarch, who acted as guarantor, and continued order indicated in the change of seasons, the return of the inundation, and the movements of celestial bodies. You were not given access to heaven. That was only for the Nasuks, for the Pharaoh. You were not able to go. Because you wasn't part of the 1% of Kemet, you didn't get to go to heaven because you didn't get the Book of the Dead. How much value did the king have on the subjects? The only person that got to make it was him. And of course, the priests who created those spells, right? So the problem with the conscious community is that their worldview is unattainable. You don't have a grounding for ethics. You don't have a grounding for knowledge. So what's the allure? The allure is malignant narcissism. This is what attracts people to this ideology. Right? Malignant narcissism is a psychological syndrome comprising of extreme mix of narcissism, antisocial behavior, aggression, and sadism. Now, imagine if I made a big deal about this coffin, but the mahogany wood and it's the cushion, and look at that, the gold trimming. You would think like I lost my mind, right? Like, why is this guy going on and on about this coffin? But we do that when it comes to this, don't we? Right? We sweat other people's tombs. Is that what we're doing? Is that what we're doing? Or how about, I just go crazy over this new tombstone and grave that I have and the descriptions I'm going to put on and how magnificent and just so gorgeous that it is. You will look like Fredo needs help. BK needs help. But then we do that for the pyramids, though. These are mausoleums, right? We're in awe of highly rich kings' tombs. Why? Doesn't make any sense. There's no expert consensus on the criteria for malignant narcissism, but many mental health experts support its existence as part of narcissism spectrum. There's also some general agreement on possible presentation of symptoms. I'm gonna go through this real quick. Some of these symptoms are grandiose fantasies, a significant need for attention, a belief in personal specialness and superiority, a sense of entitlement, arrogant, conceited behavior and attitudes, a tendency to envy others and believe others envy them. Basically, sounds a lot like white supremacy. And what I always like to tell the conscious community is the only issue you have with white supremacy is the white part. That's the part of white supremacy you don't like. You don't have an issue with slavery. You have an issue who gets to do the enslaving. You don't have a problem with oppression. You just have a problem with who gets to do the oppression, the oppressing. You want to do what's been done to you. It's revenge. And if that's the case, you have no moral high ground to stand on at all. So that's about it. I had so many different slides, but time would not permit. But that's the problem. The problem is the worldview is not attainable. And the only reason why they are so attracted to it is because basically supremacy, right? They want to be on top. They want to be king of the hill. That's the problem. So, which makes sense because you have no grounding for morality. You have no grounding for ethics. You have no grounding for epistemology. So that's the only thing you want is everybody wants to be Pharaoh. Everybody wants to rule the world, right? Remember that song from the 80s, right? So I know I ran through a lot of information. So the last few minutes, I will take some questions. So I'm here for some questions. All right, hold on. What's this? Okay. I said my quote unquote black atheist friend has said these gods were meant to be principles that communicate how the world functions, not necessarily gods in the same sense we think of deities. Heard of this all the time. And my response and your response should be, well, I understand that that's what you believe. Can you show me some primary evidence that these ancient people also held that belief? That the natures, right, is just nature, it's just science, because we're talking about what they believe, not what you think they believe. So just ask them. It's like, okay, great. Can you show me a stela? Can you show me a papyrus where this is what they said, right? So let me see here. In your estimation, what is their weakest argument? Honestly, well, clearly, as you see, the weakest argument is, well, somehow Christianity is a ripoff of Kemetic, of the Kemetic worldview. As we see, there's just no way for you to make that summation. There's just no way. Our God is not created. Yours is. You have a theogony. You have a birth of the gods. We don't have that. Your God is contingent and will die soon. Ours is everlasting. Therefore, we have the right to epistemology. You do not. It's like there is no connection. Whatever connection you can find is on the surface. And even then, it's kind of How does one protect their fellow Christians from malignant wokeness? Honestly, a lot of it just has to do with love. When people are felt love, they don't really go anywhere. A lot of times there's coldness that we show to our fellow Christian, and they don't feel connected to the body. And when they don't feel connected, because we're humans at the end of the day, we want to feel connected. And if we don't feel connected with the body, we'll find connection somewhere else. So a lot of times it's not even a theological issue for people. It's, I don't feel loved, nor do I feel empowered. So it's up to the fellowship to gather together and lock arms and make sure everyone feels like they are important, because they are an imager of God. I hope that helps, PC. Carmel says, thanks, but why the name Kemet? Doesn't it mean black? Well, it's funny enough, there's some controversy within the community about the exact interpretation of the word Kemet, right? Some believe it's the black land based on the fertile soil that comes down from the inundation of the Nile every season. Some believe it means black people. So even within them, they don't have a definitive answer to that question. Why do followers of Kemetic spirituality retain the notion that the indigenous people of Kemet were their ancestors? That's a good question. Why do followers of Kemet? I mean, for some, it might be the case. But we like the idea of thinking this way because it feels like we'll have a tighter connection with the thing that we believe in. Christianity don't need an ancestral or a genetic connection for us to be empowered by the belief system, because it's for everyone. But for this particular worldview, it is important that they have some kind of genetic linkage, right? It says, what's up with the ancient Kemetics providing food to their idols if they thought their gods were worthy principles? That's a great question to pose to my friend who asked that previous question, right? You don't give eggs Benedict to hydrogen. You know what I mean? You don't erect a temple to oxygen. The ancient people definitely believe that these were actual deities. So thank you, MJ. Putting the questions up like that. First time I've seen that. I love that feature. Bye bye Zoom. Yeah, man. You know, we're trying to get better technology so that we can convey the gospel in the most concise way possible. So I'm glad you like that. So anyone else? Anyone else? Please make sure you guys subscribe. You know, also coming up next, let me make sure that I put this link up as well. My man right here, Adam Coleman, he's coming up next, the top of the hour, and he's going to be talking about the problem with Black atheism. That's my guy. You know, we've done a lot of stuff together. We've done some breakdowns, you know. Wow, that's a great question. With so many excellent resources, where should someone begin to learn this worldview? There's a great book. Let me make sure I say it correctly. Let me look at it real quick. Hold on. I'll tell you right now. What's the name of that book? Hold on. Let's see if I can remember that. It's Unmasking the Pagan Christ. All right, I'll put the link up. Unmasking the Pagan Christ, the evangelical response to the cosmic Christ idea. So let me put that up there. What would it take to get a copy of your PowerPoint review, the content for further study? You know what? What I'll do is, after it's done, I'll create a PDF and I'll put it in a Mediafire link. And then later on, either today or tomorrow, I'll put it in the comment section for you. All right, Beta Works? Right, it's called Unmasking the Pagan Christ. It's on Amazon. Really, really, really great book, guys. So, any other questions? Any other questions? Actually, you know what? Since I got you guys here, I don't have enough subscribers to get a super chat. But if you're so inclined, you can always hit up your brother's PayPal. You know what I mean? So I could get even better equipment, because this is the free version. There's a pro version of this that it works. You know what I mean? So if you think this is crazy, you should see if I get the pro joint. So it's 8:53, a couple more minutes left before it's over. This has been an amazing conference. I've enjoyed everyone's presentation. We've hit so many different subjects. Make sure we show our love to Vocab Malone for spearheading this. And I think it's really just divine providence that this conference came at such an important time in our planet, you know, so that people were just forced to be in their homes. And, you know, you got nothing to do, you might as well listen to the gospel for the weekend. And that's what we provided. And I think that's amazing. So we definitely got to show our love to Vocab. So when you see him or whatever, just tell him, yo, bro, thanks, you know, for doing this. You know what I mean? So that's what's up. Am I on Patreon? No. Elizabeth, I'm a newbie. I just really started doing this YouTube thing maybe, well, this summer I think will be my first year doing this. So yeah, so I definitely need to work on a Patreon. So thank you for that reminder. And thank you, CMB, for saying that's fire. This is my dude. He's one half of the Context 360 crew that me and him do. A lot of times you're gonna see him on my channel just chopping up and breaking down stuff. And he's also a pastor in a church in Dayton, Ohio. So please make sure you look for him, CMB, the ambassador. That's what he calls himself on Facebook as well. This is my guy. I love him very much. This is that dude right there. So thank you, Dinu. I tried. Man, I fast forward mad stuff though. I had slides. Thank you, brother. Bro, I had slides. I had so many slides on deck. It's gonna crush them, but time doesn't permit. So yeah, man. MJ did an amazing job too, bro. My man book game is strong. MJ Jackson's amazing. Thank you, Lisa. Right? I say Lisa for your amazing work. God bless you. Thank you so much, man. It was a pleasure serving and teaching. I love doing this. I hope you guys are edified and empowered so that when people come at you, you know, you are now fully equipped to have an apologia. So when people ask you for the hope that you have, you know, because we are all apologists, whether you like it or not, because people are going to ask you questions about your faith. You might not be on YouTube, you might not be doing videos, but we all have ministry. We're all ministers of reconciliation. Liza, thank you. I am so sorry. Eliza. Wow, nice, Eliza. Cool, cool. What up, Lala? What's popping? Good to see you streaming. Sorry I was busy and didn't know till now. It's okay, Biggie Huda. You be bigging me up. You be posting my stuff, bro. You know what I mean? I appreciate that. So don't even worry about that. What's CMB's link? Yo, CMB, drop your link real quick, bro. People are asking for you. Yeah, bro. I ran through a lot of info. I know, man. 30 minutes is just not enough. Just not enough. So, but you know what, guys? I'm gonna let you guys go. I'm gonna put. Let me make sure I put his link for Adam one more time. So I don't want you guys to miss what he's gonna do because he's gonna kill it. He's gonna kill it. Big up to my man SOC. Make sure you cop that book on Book of Galatians. You know what I mean? And actually, me, CMB, and SOC got something cooking up that you guys are gonna really appreciate. You know what I mean? We're gonna do a special breakdown on the Sabbath. You know what I mean? On the Sabbath, because CMB was a former STA, SOC was a former Judaizer. They both had big convictions on the Sabbath. So we're going to do a 3-part series on the Sabbath. So be on the lookout for that. That's going to be crazy. So with that, guys, it's 8:57. I'm going to let you guys go. We're going to go to the next classroom. It's the BK Apologist signing off. Peace. I think I gave here's the link again. All right. That's the next class. All right, y'all. Peace.